Hello and welcome back to another episode of Only a Bag, a travel podcast. Some of you might have noticed the name has changed to an Italian travel podcast. That is because that although I've traveled throughout Europe and I've traveled in China, I have a lot of experience, and most of my experience actually comes from traveling in Italy. My partner and I have been in Italy for about 2 years now, but we've traveled through Italy for about 3, almost 4 total. But I figured a lot of the information that I do talk about and I do give can be transferred and can be used in other cities and in other countries. In this episode, to sort of christen the new Italian travel podcast angle, we wanted to talk about Rome specifically, and I brought Darcy back to talk about Rome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Welcome back. We wanted to talk about Rome because we've been here for about a month now, and we'll be here for another couple more weeks house sitting. It's a very hot and humid time to be house sitting in Rome, but we thought it might be fun and interesting, and we've actually been here before. But since we've been in Rome, we realized there are a number of things that we'd love to share with people, not necessarily about like how to book reservations, although we do have some information about that. It's more of like how to really have fun and also how to see maybe the more unseen sides of Rome, or not even that. I think it's just maybe like how to live like a Roman, so to speak, a modern
The things
Roman.
outside of the tourist destinations, basically.
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to talk about those over the course of the next couple of podcasts. I think there are about 6 of them. And it's going to cover, basically how to shop at outdoor markets. It's going to talk about gelato. It's also going to talk about other food. I think gelato is its own episode. It's very important. And there's a few other things in like public transportation, walking around, things like that.
How to find bathrooms.
An incredible, important little bit of information. And in this episode, to start it off, we thought we'd talk about what kind of tourist you are. There are 2 main types of tourists, I think, and it's the sort of like the one who plans it out, right? The one they plan out everything, and there's the one that sort of shows up and sees what's happening, sees what's going on. Mm-hmm. I think we tend to be the second one.
Yeah.
We tend to sort of show up and just see what's happening. We sort of like if there's art shows or if there's gallery openings or if there's museum openings, something like that. We'll try to stay on top of the sort of current events. That way we can kind of show up, but we don't plan out. I don't think we've ever bought tickets to something like the Colosseum.
No, I do think there's a spectrum, though. I mean, obviously, we set up where we're going to be staying and have a loose idea of what we want to do, a loose outline, but it's very loosey-goosey. So not like my parents' version of taking 6 months to plan, a 2-week trip, and it's highly scheduled, basically.
And I think that's the classic thing. That's the other kind of traveler, which is the sort of planning out everything. You have 2 weeks of vacation, so every day there's something new. And then, you have this, the tickets are already scheduled, the train tickets even to get around the city. I know some people that try to figure out how to get subway tickets ahead of time, which isn't a bad idea. But of course you can get subway, metro, whatever bus tickets usually at, stations. So it's not really important to get it ahead of time. But I think for many people growing up, that would, especially I think when you're a kid, because you're a kid, your parents have to sort of plan on, we got to plan on doing stuff. We can't just wander around, or kids are going to lose their minds. So I think that plays into it pretty heavily. But I think a lot of people that we know grew up doing that sort of when we took a vacation, if they took a vacation. It would be a vacation that was very strictly planned and adhered to, and there wasn't a lot of deviation. It wasn't we're going to go look for a fun place to eat. It was like, I've already looked at the best places, Anthony Bourdain's, 5-star restaurants, over, whatever it is. It's sort of this I know where we're going to eat. I know where we're going to sleep. I know where we're going to have a coffee in the morning, rather than just sort of exploring and seeing what happens.
And I think every version of traveling is a valid way of doing it. It's whatever. I think it's best to do whatever is less stressful for you. I know Nathaniel and I don't like to highly plan because then we feel like we have to always make deadlines and make sure that we're not missing anything. But for us, just kind of going with the flow and, turning a corner to an amazing place is so much more exciting for us than having known about that place and scheduled it out for 4:00 that afternoon, So they're both valid ways of doing it.
And I think on that note, I know depending when you're listening to this, because of coronavirus, there are a number of places, unfortunately, you do need to make reservations to get in, both museums as well as some restaurants, sometimes cafes and stuff, but it's mostly museums and certain restaurants will need reservations, especially the really popular ones. I guess the one that, they end up on the sort of travel channels and they end up on the Netflix shows and things like that. They're the ones that, on normal days they'll have a line out the door and it's just first come, first serve. But then because of coronavirus, you do need to get a reservation ahead of time.
Even some bars, it's a big thing in Rome here to have like cocktail bars, which are fairly expensive by my, understanding. But anyways, we'll talk about that later. But even for some of those bars right now, because of COVID, you have to have a reservation even a few days in advance if it's a really popular night.
Absolutely. No, I think that's kind of unfortunate. Not unfortunate, but it makes being spontaneous a little bit more difficult because it's like you hear about a bar and you can't just go there. You have to plan it out all of a sudden. So it's sort of just getting clear on what kind of tourist you are before you go anywhere. Again, this doesn't necessarily relate to Rome. It relates to anywhere, but it's just trying to figure out before you leave, figuring out how you travel. Figuring out. And I know we've talked in the past about traveling together and traveling solo, but this is a slightly more, are you somebody who tries to just make things up as you go along, or are you somebody who plans? And I think that the best type is a sort of middle ground. I mean, there are so many things we've missed because we didn't plan on it. Like, whether it needed reservations or whether we needed, it's like, it was booked 6 months out. But we knew 8 months ago we could have made a reservation. So I think there's some difficult things like that where the hybrid approach, I think, works really well, rather than I'm going to go and see what happens. Because there are also some things you mentioned earlier, I think people watching, or maybe you mentioned that when the mic wasn't on, but people watching, it's you don't really plan for that when you're planning out a trip, but it's great to just go sit in a cafe somewhere and just watch people walk by.
Absolutely.
And that concludes it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you on the next one. And thank you, Darcy, for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'll be here all episodes.
The next
few ones.
And we hope to see you back. Thank you for listening.